Michelle here, the Chapter Goddess. I am a mom, author, blogger, freelancer, podcaster, producer, and overall creative. With this show, I really want to focus on creatives and bring their authentic self to life. How are they motivated to pursue their passions? What have been the struggles along the way? Does self-care play an important role in who they are today and how they connect with the creative flow? Bringing one's authentic self to the forefront is important in this world that we live in currently. Sharing your self-care, your tips, and how you stay on track for things without losing it completely is also important. Self-care is not talked about enough, and authenticity and self-care are what I like to highlight with my creatives, as well as getting to know them. So get ready for a fun and entertaining show. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's get ready to meet this episode's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live with me. We are going to be hanging out with another fantastic author with an imagination that I'm a tad bit jealous of. She's got a great list of publications and books out there, and I'm excited to have her on here to pick her brain and learn a little bit about her. But before we dive right in, hit that like button, subscribe if you hadn't. And I want to mention that today's episode is sponsored by Creative Edge Publicity. So without further ado, let me bring in our guest. Hey.
Hello.
And I am going to apologize if you hear my child screaming in the background. I don't know what's going on over there. So go ahead and introduce yourself and tell our listeners and viewers a little about you and the book the story we're going to be chatting about today.
Well, my name is Jennifer. I write under the name J.R. Johnson because, as I like to say, I have a lovely but incredibly common name. So my parents gave me a great name, but I can't use it because there are so many other writers named Jennifer Johnson. We're everywhere. So J.R. Johnson. And mostly I write speculative fiction. So I really like science fiction. I like fantasy. And I've been a reader all my life, like so many other people. But eventually I got to the point where I said, you know what? I think maybe I could do this. I'll just try it and see what happens. And it's been a number of years, but what happened was that in the end, I entered the Writers of the Future contest and I won. It was pretty fabulous. And so this whole year has been an incredible whirlwind. And I'm happy the first plug of the book, here's the book. It's very exciting. The L. Ron Hubbard Writers of the Future, Volume 39. So terrific cover. And it's one of those things you're like, oh my goodness, it's a real book. And I love it. So my story in this book is called Piracy for Beginners. And it's a novella. It's a science fiction story about a woman she's a captain of a spaceship that comes under fire. And what does she do? How can she protect her people? How can she save both herself, her passengers, and peace between Earth and the moon? So I had a great time writing it. And so far I've had some pretty good feedback. And fortunately, other people have had a good time reading it too, which is really what's important.
Yes, that's how you know something is successful when people love it. And I've got a little blurb for you guys here, and it tells us a little bit about the story, Well, I mean, not too much, but with her spaceship at the wrong end of a pirate's guns, a former war hero must face down her enemies and demons to save Earth's last best chance for peace. Piracy for Beginners by J.R. Johnson. And I love the graphics for that you sent over. It is gorgeous, and I feel like it really portrays like what is happening in that story. So
it was incredible.
Yes, go ahead and tell us more about the main character and where the inspiration for that character came from.
Let me I will absolutely do that. Let me just first give a very quick plug for that artist who did the illustration for my story. His name is Chris Binns, and he was a winner of the Illustrators of the Future contest. which runs in parallel to the writers. So he did an incredible job putting together the character that I came up with, and taking a really dynamic scene. I was a little worried because they said, oh, you'll have an illustrator come in and do hopefully a dynamic illustration for the story. I was like, oh no, like it's in space, right? It's all set in space, dark, no color. What's going to happen? But he picked the perfect scene. He did an incredible job of bringing in color and light and motion, and I just really enjoyed that. I thought it was terrific.
I'm gonna pause that back up here because it's gorgeous. I mean, it is very much like you can tell it's space, but the way each of the people is highlighted, it just really makes it jump out at you.
Yeah, he did a great job, and I think he really captured the person jumping is the main character of the story there, and she is she's the captain, and she's fighting off the pirates, but she's really both. She has a darkish past. Should we say hello? She has a darkish past, but she's also has she has a strong sense of humor. So I like the fact that I was able to incorporate both of those things into the story. So I hope that people like the character. I mean, I just loved her. I thought she was great, and I hope that they like the story.
She sounds really relatable too. Was there anything happening at the time of the creation of the story that kind of found its way coming into it, if that makes sense?
That's an interesting question. I wouldn't point out anything in particular because I was not actually about to be captured by pirates. But I think that I really do put a lot of myself into every character, every story. And so I would be writing and thinking, what would I say in this situation? How would I deal with this? And so I did step back a little bit and think, this is like basically my snarky humor. So I think there is a lot of that in there.
I love it. So how did this story go about finding its way into the contest? Did you write it beforehand and think, oh, hey, this will be great? Or was it something you wrote after discovering the information about the contest?
Well, it's a good question. And the second, in this particular case, I had known about the contest because it's one of those things that just sort of enters the zeitgeist when you're an amateur writer and looking for potential markets and ways to advance your craft. So it's like, oh, this is a contest only for amateurs, which is nice, right? You're not up against every professional out there. They do pay professional rates. And one of the things that I honestly hadn't even focused on is, oh yes, there's this whole week-long writers conference, and they do this whole package for you. And I thought, well, I'm not going to win, but it's a great, it's not just like, oh, yes, I could be published, but it's also a great motivator, right? And so they do it in quarters. So every 3 months you can submit and hopefully win. But even if you don't win, it's a great way to just say, okay, I have a deadline. I need to get something out to the contest. And the range of lengths that they will accept is quite large. And so I forget what the lower length is, something like 2,000 or 2,500 words, I think. But it goes up to 17,000 words. And this particular story, which I had written beforehand, but this particular story was almost exactly 17,000 words, which is very long. Like for a short story market, if you're looking for something, it's very hard to find somewhere to put that. Yeah. And so I was able to say, oh, actually, this is the perfect thing. I'll send it off. And I did.
I like that. I love that because a lot of times I found myself like, if there is a short story submission open, I end up having to write the story like after I've read it. Like, okay, let's bang this out and enter it, send it in and see if it gets accepted. But that is so awesome that you had that piece and just it fit. That's almost like kismet, So,
Yeah, it really did feel serendipitous in many ways. I mean, I do know a lot of the other people who won the contest or who entered the contest. They will just write every 3 months for this particular contest. And the great thing is they then, even if they don't happen to make it to the very top tier. They do get some feedback in terms of what happens if they get an honorable mention, if they get a silver honorable mention, finalist, that sort of thing. But then you've got a story that you can send out into the world, not to that market, but to all the other markets. And so it's a really nice way for people to spur their creativity. And having deadlines helps me, I know, so it may help others as well.
Yeah. What were some of the takeaways or lessons you learned from entering into the contest and having to go through that whole process?
Well, in terms of actually entering, that is, I would say that it's the same lesson that you learn from this entire process. Writing things, sitting down, writing something, editing it, putting it together, finding a market and sending it out. You need to be persistent, right? So you need to first think, okay, this is something I want to do. Let's just try it, right? And then you work on it. And eventually you come out with a story and you think, this is not terrible. I will try sending it out to people. You have to send it out. And that can be a real hurdle for people, as you know. It's like, okay, I have to show this to another person and hopefully they'll like it, right?
Yes.
Right. But you do it and you think, okay, I did it. That's terrific. And then maybe you get feedback. Eventually you'll get acceptances, which is great. But you do go through a lot of rejection. And for me, one of the really nice, helpful things about this entire process is that I don't mind rejections anymore. I mean, this was a big deal for me, right? Because you start out sending things, you're like, oh no, my precious baby. I hope that it's accepted well. And then, it comes back so many times. And then you think, okay, fine. This just didn't fit with this editor, this market, what have you, and I will send it out again. And that's perfectly okay.
Sorry, I'm having to threaten him with Pokemon Go because Dad gave him his old phone and set up a Pokemon Go account on there for him. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to the park and you can't do it later. And I'm just like, okay, Dad, I'm officially mad at you right now but then again, it gives me something as leverage. So sorry for my little intruder.
Not at all. And it's interesting too, because life is full of that sort of thing, right? I mean, lots of interruptions, lots of whatever. And so having the deadline of the contest, for example, very helpful. But just thinking, you know what? Actually, you asked what it was like to write this story, essentially.
Yeah.
And part of it was I just had to cram. A lot of it was me cramming things into very small spaces of time. So I ended up with this huge story, but sometimes I wrote it like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs at a time. Mm-hmm. And you just do what you can and figure out a way to make that work. And eventually it gets done.
That is awesome. So how did you take care of your mental health during that process? Because I know as a creative, we both have to have that balance. All of us have to have that balance to keep our sanity. What were some of your tips and tricks, or even just small things you did to keep yourself on track without losing your mind?
Well, I don't know about that last part, but in terms of how I managed, for writing in particular, one thing that helps me, it really depends on who you are and, what your life is like and, what you respond to positively. But for me, I respond well to rules, not sort of punitive rules, nothing particularly hard and fast, but kind of oh, if I do this writing, then I get the Pokemon Go afterward, right? Yes. It's kind of like that. I will say, I'm going to write every workday. I will write at roughly the same time. I will, for me, I don't pay as much attention to word count because that ends up sometimes just being too problematic. If I don't have time to put in X number of words, then I might feel like I didn't do a great job. But if I just get there, type something, make some progress, that really helps me feel like I've done something positive and I can take care of the rest of my life, after that. But yeah. So for me, I do also tend to try to, in terms of tips, I would say find the time that works for you. For me, I try to do it first thing in the morning if I can, because there's just fewer stuff going on. I can, I haven't gotten to my email yet. I haven't started work yet, none of that. So I try to shoehorn it in. So if I were someone starting out on this, I would figure out ways to make it work that feel comfortable with your existing life. Like overthrowing everything so you can carve out 3 hours of writing time a day or 5 hours of writing time a day. Like for me, that's just not practical. It won't work. And so find something that does work for you.
Yeah, no, I totally get that because I've had to, my schedule has been in a constant shift. So it's basically like when you can get that time, you find it and utilize it. Because I've been doing a lot of freelancing too on top of my own writing. And I'm like, okay, I've got to leave time for my stuff in there too. And finding that on top of all the other projects, it's pretty challenging. But also when you get it, it's extremely rewarding because you're like, yes, I got it. I got it done. Let's celebrate and then fall asleep. Because that's normally what happens for me. Like the day is over and so yes. With writing this story, what did you use to help you imagine the world that the story was taking place in?
That's a good question. I'm not the sort of writer who does a lot of upfront research. Like I know some writers, like I was actually at the workshop, I was having a conversation with Robert J. Sawyer, who is one of the leading lights of Canadian science fiction. He's won every award ever, right? He's just fabulous at a lot of things. And so he was there as one of the judges, as one of the speakers. And so we were talking about it and he was saying, you know what? I just love research. I love doing the research. I love getting into it. I love, seeing every angle. And then he does the writing and he sort of likes he loves the research. And then he goes into the writing and it allows him to spend his working life researching cool things, which great. For me, I'm the other way around, right? I just think of something like who knows how, but it pops into my head, some confluence of different stimuli that come together and say, I saw a news article on pirates, for example, and then in this case, that's what happened. And then I saw something about a historical piece, and I forget what this even was, but it was like a historical piece about something that is still happening today. And I thought, well, that was 1,000 years ago. We are exactly the same people. Right? And then I projected it forward and I thought, okay, well, once we get into space, we're still humans in space. Wherever we go, we're humans. You look back 5,000 years, we had the same problems. We had the same loves. We had the same everything, issues. But in this case, I thought, well, even if once we get to space, we're flying around, there's still going to be pirates. It's like pirates are a thing. They've always been a thing. They probably will always be a thing. And that's where I started, right? It was like, okay, so what would it be like? And then I just thought, well, I need a character. Who would be in space? Who would end up running into these pirates? And it just percolated from there. And then next thing you know, I'm in someone's head and she's in her spaceship and the spaceship's on fire. So then you just go from there. That's how it works for me.
Nice. I love that because I feel like I write a similar way. While I love the research, I don't like to get lost in it for too long because then it prevents the story from coming out. So I have to write. And if I'm like, okay, I need to do some more research on this, I'll put like a little highlighted section and come back to it. Cause I'm like, I need to get the rest of this out. Like, it's just got to come. It's just flowing out. I'm not stopping it. So I like that. And I like that carried you into that world, especially with space. So with it being in space, are there other extraterrestrials and whatnot in it, or is it just humans?
In this case, it's just humans.
Okay.
So given the length of the story, even though, yes, it's 17,000 words long, it's not short. But given the length, I really wanted to concentrate on the main character and her problem. Right. And so it was really like, okay, there's a main character, there's someone giving her trouble, and how's she going to deal with this? And so, I could have done aliens. I considered it. But what I really wanted to do was think about human motivations. Again, sort of the starter of it was who ends up in this place and what will they do? And honestly, when I think about it, a lot of my work is really, you know what? We're the same people. We're just in a different place. We're in a different
Yeah.
place with magic. We're in a different place with ray guns, whatever, right?
Ooh,
And
I
I
like
like
that idea, though.
exploring, yeah, right? Like it's all about the human characters underneath, or
Yeah.
sorry, I should say it's all about the characters underneath, even if they're aliens, right? It's really, everybody has their own motivation. And I don't do a lot of work that goes out into, 100,000 years in the future, and we have aliens and everything is completely different. I like having science here, essentially. I like having magic here, essentially, right? I like thinking about what it would be like to just sort of step sideways in the world and think about what it would be like if just a few fundamental things were different, and also magic, right? That kind of thing.
And that makes it more, I feel like, relatable to the here and now, too, especially for those people who like the genres where it's almost like you could just turn your head and the people or the situation in the book is over here happening. Like I like that stuff. I've had a lot of my friends say like that too, because I write kind of similar with that. I do more urban fantasy rather than space stuff. But that's one of the things I've heard so many people say. It's you literally feel like what's going on in the book is happening right now in your world. And that has a different effect on people. It's awesome. So
yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I think it's really a great way to connect with people. And, some of my stuff is very serious. Some of my stuff is very not serious. But in every case, I want people to feel like they have an emotional connection to the place. And, depending on what the story is like, what their life is like at the time, if they just need an escape, good, more power to them, right? I do it all the time. It's like, I just want to dive into this book and live this story for a little while. And if I can do that for people, I think that's lovely.
Oh, yes. So this story, has it inspired you to attempt the contest again in the future?
I cannot. Even if I could, I cannot.
Oh, so if you win it, you can't compete again?
You can't, but that's okay. It's interesting because what they do is, like, if you get up to finalist, generally speaking, you can keep submitting, right? And so essentially they're giving you kind of a gold star and saying, this is good, keep going, right? Which can be so valuable, right? But if you do win, in the sense that you are one of the top 3, hold on, here's my it's very heavy, actually.
Yeah, but it's so awesome. Like, that is so cool.
It's cool, right? They go all out. That's for sure for this. But like I was second place in the 3rd quarter, right? Ooh. So second place gets this one. First place gets a bigger one. And if you happen to be the grand prize winner, you get a bigger one still. They're huge. They give you a suitcase to take home your stuff. I mean, it's incredible. But if you actually do win, in the sense that you are flown out to LA, you are put up for a week in Hollywood, and you go through this very intense, I will say, very intense week of lectures, of writing, of seminars with people, of, coffee clatches with people, that kind of thing, right? There's all sorts of stuff that happens in that week. It's very intense. If you do that, and if, you're published in the book at 8 cents a word, which is professional level for science fiction fantasy, as I'm sure you know, you are a professional writer. So, like, I've joined the Science Fiction Writers Association of America now, based, actually, because it was so long, based solely on that story. I was eligible to enter the American Professional Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers Association. So
cool.
Like, their goal in a lot of ways is to, as Joni, the contest coordinator, or contest everything woman, said when she called me and told me that I'd won, she said, you know what we do here, right? We make careers. And, who knows if I'll actually be able to reach those kinds of heights, but They really do. And that is their focus, right? They're very focused on helping you take the next step. And so what they want you to do is they don't want you in the contest anymore. They want you out there.
Yeah. I guess that does make sense. But that is actually, in a way, kind of sad. But at the same time, they're going to continuously be helping you, right?
They are.
That's,
yeah, they're very focused on that.
I would take that as over entering in the contest again. Because I can imagine, like, it can be pretty stressful waiting to hear back the results, right?
It was the first time I entered. But by the time I entered 4 times, some people win the first time. Like one of the people that was in my group, yeah, I think this particular thing, I think maybe he had submitted one other story somewhere else, and his second submission was this one, and he won. He's a fabulous writer. His story is amazing, right? But he had not much experience at all in this process. But you end up with one of the incredible things about this, you get the experience of the week, which is nice. And you meet people that at least I would never have met under other circumstances. But you end up with a group of people that you've gone through this experience with, you've shared a table of contents with, and like we now have an online group that we are still going to. And so in this case, I'm not feeling sad about the contest anymore. I'm feeling really glad that I now know this great group of people. Like I don't know how you do it, but I've never had like a real writers group to touch base with, not even in the let me share your stuff necessarily, although we have done that. But it's just really nice to be able to say, oh yeah, these are people I know. These are people I love their work, and they're terrific people. So that's been great.
It does make a difference. I will agree with you on that, because I didn't find a group like that until maybe the last year or two. And it does. It makes a huge difference in your writing and how you approach things, how you look at things, and how you handle like rejections and stuff too. Having that group of writers and people, it's like your people. Like they think like you, they kind of work like you. It's your tribe. And that's, I think, if I remember right, we're going through a name change, but the Writing Tribe is one of them. I know there's a lot of groups called the Writing Tribe on Facebook. That's one of my favorites. And then there's just the Go Indie Now family as well. That's where I've found my tribe, and I love it because you really can. Like, it makes a huge difference overall. So that's good to that you have that, though. Ooh, yes.
Yeah. So that part is terrific. So, like, that's my group, and it's all the writers in my little cohort. Plus, we had a couple of others who hadn't been able to come before because pandemic or babies or whatever, and they were able to come. So I met them too. They're terrific, and I just ended up with this great group, and all the illustrators are there too. So it's a lot of things. Like I could say, I need an illustration for a future story. I've got a whole group of illustrators to tap immediately, even though that's not my thing, right?
Yeah.
Or if you have a question, or some people are like, oh, have you heard of this market? Or, oh, does anybody know if this is how I should do this thing? You can ask that question there. And it's been really nice.
I love it. I love having those groups. Well, we are coming up on the end of our time, JR, and I want you to tell our listeners and viewers where they can follow you, find you, and find your work, because you've got some amazing writing out there. But go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you.
Well, thank you. My main home on the web is jrjohnson.me. Because as I said, it's a very common name, but jrjohnson.me, that's where I do, I have a daily blog. I've actually been blogging daily since 2021 at the beginning, because COVID just couldn't have all of my brain. That's just all there is to that. Yes, the heck with that. But also I have the blog, but then I also have a list of my publications. So if you're interested, a lot of them are available online. So if you want, you can go check out the fiction. It's called, there's a tab at the top, published fiction. Check it out. You'll see a lot of my short stuff is up there, and you can see what I'm about. I hope you like it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much again for joining the show and hanging out with us. To you guys watching, hit the like button, subscribe, drop us some comments, check out our links to both of our websites in the description. Ignore my little tornado in the hall behind me who's making lots of racket. But yeah, you guys show us some love and share this episode. Share it with your friends. And be sure to, like I said, like and subscribe. We'll see you next time, guys.
I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to get future notifications when shows come out. Also, be sure to check out my website. I have a blog featuring this creative with some other fun and interesting questions. You can also subscribe to my newsletter there to stay up to date with all things the Chapter Goddess in Madeline Dale. Once again, thanks for watching and have a great rest of the day.